The crimson skies of Zariath burned with the final light of dusk as Princess Elira stood at the highest balcony of the Crystal Palace. Her slender fingers, with their iridescent skin that shimmered between pale blue and soft lavender, gripped the railing as she gazed across the sprawling capital city. The sacred temples and ancient military academies gleamed beneath the 3 moons that had begun their ascent. "Your Highness," a voice called from behind her, "the council awaits." Elira turned, her luminous eyes, the color of distant nebulae, meeting those of her chief handmaiden. "I know what they will say, Lirel," she whispered. "The defeat at the Sarathi Nebula cannot go unanswered." "It was not your command that failed," Lirel insisted, adjusting the ceremonial cloak around the princess's shoulders. "No royal blood should be spilled for tactical errors made by generals." Elira's expression hardened slightly. "You speak dangerous words. Honor requires balance. The House of Zariath has maintained peace for 12 generations through adherence to the sacred laws." She inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the scented air of the palace gardens below. "Besides, the human arrives today. We cannot show weakness in the face of Earth's envoy." As she spoke those words, a streak of light cut across the darkening sky, a small transport vessel making its final approach to the royal landing platform. The first official human representative to set foot on Zariath soil had arrived. "Prepare my formal attire," Elira commanded, her voice steady despite the heaviness in her heart. "I shall greet the Earthling before joining the council." The royal landing platform hummed with energy as Captain Lucas Harper stepped from the transport vessel onto the polished obsidian surface. The gravity adjustment made him momentarily lightheaded, but years of space travel had conditioned his body to adapt quickly. The air was thinner than Earth's, but richer in oxygen, a curious biological phenomenon that the briefings had mentioned. Lucas straightened his dark blue uniform, emblazoned with the United Earth Commonwealth insignia, and took in his surroundings. The architecture was both impossibly ancient and strikingly advanced. Crystal spires that seemed to grow organically from the red bedrock of the planet, pulsing with internal light that shifted through spectrum colors not entirely visible to human eyes. "Captain Harper," came a melodious voice that seemed to resonate in his chest rather than just his ears. He turned to find himself facing a delegation of tall, elegant beings. At their center stood one who could only be royalty. Her bearing, her attire, and the subtle deference of those around her made that clear. She wore a flowing robe of material that seemed woven from starlight, with ceremonial armor plates adorning her shoulders and forearms. Unlike the more rugged, warrior-like appearance of her guards, her features were delicate, almost ethereal. "Princess Elira Zariath," Lucas said, executing the complex bow he had practiced for weeks. "I bring greetings and peaceful intentions from Earth." "You honor us with your presence," she replied, her voice carrying unusual harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. "I trust your journey through the Void Gates was uneventful?" "As smooth as such journeys can be," Lucas smiled, straightening. "Though I confess the translocation effect still disorients me somewhat." Something flickered across the princess's face. Surprise, perhaps, at his candor. The briefings had warned that Zariathians valued stoicism and rarely admitted weakness. "You are honest," she said after a moment. "That is unexpected." Lucas inclined his head slightly. "I was sent because I value truth over diplomacy. Your Highness, Earth seeks genuine understanding, not merely political advantage." A subtle shift occurred in her posture. "Then perhaps your mission is poorly timed, Captain. Our kingdom faces internal matters that may complicate your study of our culture." Before Lucas could inquire further, a tall, severe-looking Zariathian approached, bowing deeply to the princess before speaking in their native tongue. A cascade of musical tones that the translator implant in Lucas's ear struggled to process. The princess's response was curt, and when she turned back to Lucas, her expression had closed like a door. "You must forgive me, Captain. I am summoned to an urgent council session. Seneschal Odrin will escort you to your quarters and see to your needs." The indicated official, gray-skinned with age, his eyes the deep purple of ancient stars, stepped forward. "Your Highness, Lucas called as she turned to leave, a sudden inexplicable impulse driving him to speak. "Whatever troubles your kingdom, I hope wisdom prevails over tradition." She paused, regarding him with an unreadable expression. "In Zariath, Captain Harper, they are often one and the same." With that cryptic remark, she swept away, her entourage following in her wake, leaving Lucas with the distinct impression that he had arrived at a pivotal moment in Zariathian history, one that his briefings had utterly failed to prepare him for. The great council chamber of Zariath was an architectural marvel carved from a single massive crystal that had fallen from the sky in the ancient days. Its faceted walls refracted light in hypnotic patterns across the circular floor, where 13 thrones arranged in a perfect circle surrounded a central flame that burned without fuel, the eternal honor fire. Said to contain the collective spiritual essence of all royal sacrifices throughout Zariathian history. Elira took her place in the circle of 13, acutely aware that her throne, inlaid with the royal crest of her bloodline, stood directly opposite the empty seat once occupied by her father. King Thelion had joined the honor fire 5 cycles ago, offering himself when their son had threatened to destabilize. The sacrifice had been accepted. The sun had calmed. Such was the way of their people since time immemorial. Seneschal Odrin, who had quickly returned after situating the human envoy, struck the ceremonial gong, its resonance rippling through the chamber like a physical force. "The Council of 13 is convened," he announced, his ancient voice carrying surprising strength. "We gather to address the defeat of our forces at the Sarathi Nebula and the resulting dishonor upon the crown." Elira felt 12 pairs of eyes turn to her, some sympathetic, others cold with judgment. "The facts are these," continued General Vax, the military commander whose strategy had failed. His face was a mask of stone as he spoke. "Our forces were outmaneuvered by the Krell hegemony. 27 warships lost, 9,000 warriors fallen. The defensive line has collapsed, leaving 3 outer colonies vulnerable." "And where were you during this catastrophe, General?" asked Councillor Miria, one of the few allies Elira could count on in the chamber. "I commanded from the royal flagship, as is proper," Vax replied stiffly. "Yet you return unscathed while thousands perish," Miria pressed, her luminescent eyes flashing. "Enough," Odrin interjected. "General Vax's tactical errors are not in question. The issue before us is the restoration of honor and the appeasement of the cosmic forces that clearly show disfavor towards Zariath." Elira knew what came next. She had been prepared for this moment since childhood, taught the rituals and responsibilities of royal blood. Still, knowing did not ease the cold dread that spread through her body. "The ancient texts are clear," Odrin continued, his voice softening with what might have been genuine regret. "When royal armies face defeat of this magnitude, balance must be restored through royal sacrifice." A murmur rippled through the council, not of shock, but of solemn acknowledgement. As the sole remaining member of the direct royal line, Odrin turned to Elira. "The burden falls to you, Princess. The ritual of honor restoration must be performed within 14 days. Elira rose from her throne, her face composed despite the storm raging within. "I accept the judgment of the council and the dictates of our sacred traditions. I shall prepare for the ritual." "Your Highness," Miria protested, also standing. "Surely there are alternatives. The texts speak of trials by combat, of quests for redemption." "Alternatives that have not been invoked in 20 generations," interrupted Councillor Drav, his voice harsh. "The princess understands her duty. Do not sow doubt with obsolete options." Elira raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "The decision is made. I have been prepared for this possibility since I first took the oath of succession." She squared her shoulders, her voice steady. "Seneschal Odran, I request High Priest Hiral be summoned to begin my purification." The council members bowed their heads in respect, even those who had argued against her fate. Sacrifice was the highest honor in Zariathian culture, and Elira's acceptance elevated her in their eyes. As the council session adjourned, Elira remained standing before her throne, her gaze fixed on the eternal honor fire. Within 2 weeks, if the ancient rituals held true, her essence would join the countless royal souls who had come before her, surrendering her physical form to maintain the harmony of their world. What troubled her most was not fear of death. Zariathians viewed physical existence as merely one phase of being, but the knowledge that she would leave her people without a direct heir. The succession would be contested. Civil war was a possibility. Yet tradition was clear. Honor demanded balance, and royal blood was the currency of that balance. As she finally turned to leave the chamber, a strange thought crossed her mind. What would the human envoy think of their ways? The question was irrelevant, of course, yet it lingered as she walked the crystal corridors toward her chambers to begin the first rites of purification. Captain Lucas Harper was not a man easily impressed, having visited 17 different worlds during his 10-year career with Earth's diplomatic corps. Yet the quarters prepared for him in the east wing of the Crystal Palace left him momentarily speechless. The ceiling appeared to be open to the night sky, though a gentle warmth throughout the room suggested some form of energy field rather than actual exposure to the elements. The furniture seemed grown rather than built, organic curves of a material that yielded perfectly to his body when he cautiously tested a chair. Most striking was the wall that appeared to be a living aquatic ecosystem. Vibrantly colored creatures that resembled a cross between fish and butterflies drifted through luminescent water plants. "I trust the accommodations are satisfactory," said Seneschal Odrin, who had escorted him personally. "They're extraordinary," Lucas admitted. "But I'm more interested in what just happened with the princess. She seemed troubled." The Seneschal's expression remained carefully neutral. "Internal matters of state, Captain. Nothing that need concern Earth's interests." "My mission is to understand Zariathian culture," Lucas countered. "If something significant is occurring, it falls within my purview." Odrin regarded him silently for a long moment. "You were selected because your psychological profile indicated respect for other cultural values, even when they differ from your own. Is that assessment accurate?" Lucas frowned. "It is." "Then understand this. What transpires now is a sacred tradition dating back to the founding of our civilization. It is not for outsiders to question or interfere." "That's not an answer, Seneschal." "It is all the answer you require for now." Odrin moved toward the door. "Rest, Captain. Tomorrow you will be given a tour of the capital. The princess has arranged for cultural attachés to answer your questions, those appropriate for an outsider." After the Seneschal departed, Lucas activated his secure communication device, linking to the Earth vessel in orbit. "Commander Williams, I need everything we have on Zariathian royal traditions, particularly anything related to military defeats or council emergency sessions." The commander's voice came through clearly. "That's a broad request, Captain. Something's happening here. The princess has been called before their council for what they're calling an internal matter. But the tension I'm sensing suggests it's serious. I'll have the cultural team compile what we know, but Harper, tread carefully. Our intelligence on Zariathian royal customs is limited. They've kept those traditions closely guarded." "Understood." Harper out. Lucas moved to the window, gazing out at the alien cityscape. Crystalline structures caught the moonlight, creating an otherworldly glow across the capital. Somewhere in that labyrinth of light and shadow, decisions were being made that had visibly troubled the composed princess he'd met briefly. Despite Odrin's warning, Lucas knew he couldn't simply ignore whatever was unfolding. Understanding alien cultures meant understanding all aspects, even those they preferred to keep hidden from outsiders. High Priest Hiral was ancient even by Zariathian standards, his skin possessing the translucent quality that came only with centuries of life. He moved with deliberate slowness through the sacred chamber where Princess Illyra knelt on a cushion of woven moonslake, her formal attire replaced by the simple white robe of supplicants. "You understand the path before you, child?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he prepared the sacred oils. "I do, High Priest." Illyra replied, her eyes focused on the small flame burning in the ceremonial bowl before her. 14 days of purification. 7 elements to cleanse. 1 final surrender. "Not merely the physical rituals," Hiral corrected gently, beginning to apply the first oil, extracted from rare crystals found only in the deepest caves of Zariath's southern continent, to her forehead. "The inner journey. The separation of essence from form. The preparation of spirit for transcendence." Alira closed her eyes as the cool liquid traced patterns across her skin. I have studied the texts since childhood. Study is not experience. The old priest said, No royal has undertaken the ritual of honor restoration in 4 generations. Your father's sacrifice was of a different nature, voluntary rather than mandated. The burden you bear is heavier. The defeat was not my doing, Alira said softly, a rare moment of vulnerability. Hiral's hands paused in their work. Yet you accept the consequence. I am Zariath. The royal blood carries both privilege and responsibility. The priest resumed his ministrations, now applying a second oil to her hands, this one derived from the luminescent plants that grew in the sacred groves. Your acceptance honors your lineage, but I must ask, as is my duty, is your heart pure in this sacrifice? Doubt contaminates the ritual. Alira opened her eyes, meeting the ancient priest's gaze directly. I accept my duty, High Priest. I will not bring shame to my house by hesitation. Acceptance is not the same as embrace, Hiral observed. The honor fire accepts only willing spirits. Then I shall make my spirit willing. She replied firmly, Guide me in the purification rites. The old priest nodded, though concern lingered in his eyes. We begin with the elemental cleansing. Today, earth. Tomorrow, water. Then air, fire, void, light, and finally, spirit. As he spoke, attendants entered carrying vessels of sacred soil collected from each province of Zariath. The ritual would require Alira to immerse herself in this soil, connecting her body to the planet she would soon leave behind. The human envoy, she said suddenly as the attendants prepared the ceremonial bath of earth. He will witness none of this, ensure he is occupied elsewhere during the rituals. Hiral looked surprised. You fear his interference? I fear his misunderstanding. Alira corrected. Earth-dwellers hold different views on sacrifice. He would see only death where we see transcendence and honor. As you wish, Princess. Hiral bowed slightly, though perhaps you underestimate the human capacity for cultural comprehension. Alira said nothing more as she prepared to enter the first stage of purification. She could not explain, even to herself, why the thought of the human's reaction troubled her. His opinion was irrelevant to her duty. Yet as the sacred soil began to cover her body, she found herself wondering what Captain Lucas Harper would say if he knew the price Zariathian honor demanded. The following morning, Lucas found himself escorted not by the princess as he had hoped, but by a cultural attaché named Varin, a scholarly Zariathian with an enthusiasm for explaining the more innocuous aspects of their civilization. The Crystal Palace has stood for 12,000 Earth years. Varin explained as they walked through a massive gallery lined with statues of previous monarchs. The central spire was grown from a single seed crystal using techniques lost to modern science. Lucas nodded politely, but his attention was elsewhere. I notice the princess isn't joining us today. Her Highness has entered a period of ceremonial seclusion, Varin replied smoothly. A common practice for royalty during times of reflection. Reflection on what exactly? Varin's step faltered slightly. State matters that require spiritual contemplation. Does this have anything to do with the military defeat I've heard mentioned? Something about a nebula? The cultural attaché's expression closed immediately. You are well informed for a newcomer, Captain Harper. Not well enough, apparently, Lucas pressed. I'd appreciate some clarity. Varin stopped walking, turning to face Lucas directly. Some aspects of our culture are not open for diplomatic exchange. The princess's current activities fall into that category. Lucas decided to change tactics. I understand. Cultural sensitivity is paramount to my mission. Perhaps instead, you could explain Zariathian concepts of honor? My briefings touched on it, but clearly it holds deep significance here. This seemed to relax Varin somewhat. Honor is the foundation of our society, not mere personal honor as humans conceive it, but cosmic honor, the balance between privilege and sacrifice, between power and responsibility. And how's this balance maintained? Through various means, Varin said, resuming their walk. most commonly through service, achievement, or ritual compensation. Those who hold the highest positions bear the greatest responsibility for maintaining balance. The royal family? Lucas surmised. Yes. The bloodline that unified Zariath 12,000 years ago made a covenant with the cosmic forces. Their elevated status comes with commensurate obligations. Lucas remembered the empty throne he had noticed in the palace's reception hall. The late king, the princess's father. I understand he died relatively recently. Was his death related to these obligations? Varen's luminescent eyes widened slightly. You truly have done your research, Captain. Yes, King Thelian made the ultimate honor sacrifice 5 cycles ago to stabilize our sun during a period of dangerous activity. His essence joined the eternal honor fire, and the stellar anomalies ceased immediately. Lucas struggled to keep his expression neutral. You're suggesting the king's death somehow affected stellar phenomena? Not death, Captain, transcendence. And yes, the connection between royal sacrifice and cosmic harmony has been documented throughout our history. A chill ran down Lucas's spine as pieces began to fall into place. And now, after a military defeat? Varen stopped abruptly. I believe we should continue to the Technological Exhibition Hall. Our advances in crystalline computing may interest your scientists. The abrupt change of subject confirmed Lucas's growing suspicion. He allowed Varen to lead him onward, but his mind was racing. The ceremonial seclusion of the princess, the council meeting, the references to honor restoration after military defeat. They painted a disturbing picture. That evening, Lucas used his diplomatic access codes to enter the palace's cultural archives, ostensibly to research Zariathian art forms, but with a very different purpose in mind. The archive was mercifully empty of attendants at this late hour, its crystal data terminals glowing softly in the dimness. He began with searches on honor rituals, military traditions, and royal responsibilities. Most entries were frustratingly vague, couched in poetic language and religious symbolism. But when he cross-referenced honor restoration with royal obligations, the terminal produced a historical text that made his blood run cold. In times of grave dishonor, when armies fall and the cosmic balance tilts, royal blood must flow to restore harmony. The ritual of honor restoration calls for the highest-ranking royal to surrender their physical form through sacred immolation in the eternal honor fire. Lucas stared at the text, hoping he had misunderstood, but further searches only confirmed his fear. The Zariathians, for all their advanced technology and seemingly enlightened governance, practiced ritual sacrifice of their monarchs in response to certain types of crises. And Princess Alira, as the sole remaining member of the direct royal line, was preparing to die for a military defeat she hadn't even commanded. Lucas closed the terminal, his mind racing. Earth's diplomatic protocols were clear: absolute non-interference in the internal cultural practices of sovereign civilizations, no matter how disturbing those practices might seem to human sensibilities. His career, perhaps even the fragile alliance between Earth and Zariath, could be jeopardized if he intervened. Yet as he made his way back to his quarters, Lucas couldn't shake the image of the princess's face when they had first met, the subtle strain behind her composed expression, the weight she carried even then. She had known, even as she greeted him, what the council would demand of her. He reached his quarters and paced the floor, caught in an impossible ethical dilemma. Honor and duty, concepts he understood well as a military officer, versus the preservation of life. Cultural respect versus basic human values. By morning, he had made his decision. Protocol be damned. He needed to speak with Princess Alira. The water purification ritual left Alira physically exhausted but mentally clarified. For 6 hours, she had been immersed in the sacred pool beneath the palace, breathing through a ceremonial reed while meditating on the flowing nature of existence. The ritual was designed to teach acceptance of change, of transformation from one state to another. As attendants helped her from the pool and wrapped her in drying cloths, Seneschal Odrin approached, his face bearing an expression of controlled annoyance. "The human envoy requests an audience, Your Highness," he announced with obvious disapproval. "He has been most persistent." Alira felt a curious flutter in her chest that she immediately suppressed. I am in purification. Seneschal, he was to be kept occupied elsewhere. We have tried, Princess. He insists the matter concerns Earth-Zariath relations and cannot wait. He has invoked his diplomatic status. She considered refusing, but something curiosity, perhaps, made her reconsider. Very well, I will see him in the East Garden once I am presentable. But briefly, Seneschal, the air purification begins at sunset. 30 minutes later, dressed in the white robe of a supplicant, but with her royal circlet upon her brow, Elira walked the path through the East Garden, a marvel of botanical engineering, where plants from across the galaxy grew in harmonious arrangements, sustained by carefully calibrated atmospheric bubbles. Captain Lucas Harper waited beside a blooming Terran cherry tree, a gift from Earth's diplomatic corps a decade earlier. The pink blossoms made a striking contrast against the predominantly blue and purple vegetation of Zariath. Captain, she greeted him formally, Seneschal Odrin informs me you have urgent diplomatic business. Lucas turned, and Elira was struck by the intensity in his expression. Gone was the measured diplomat she had met upon his arrival. Princess Elira, he began, then hesitated, clearly struggling with protocol. I apologize for the deception. My concerns are not strictly diplomatic in nature. She raised an eyebrow. Then why insist on this meeting? Because I've learned what the Council has demanded of you, he said bluntly, and I cannot in good conscience remain silent. Elira felt a cold shock run through her, followed immediately by indignation. You have overstepped. Captain, my duties to Zariath are not Earth's concern. They became my concern the moment I understood what honor restoration entails. Lucas countered, taking a step closer. You're preparing for ritual suicide, Princess. For a military defeat you didn't cause. You use Earth terms for Zariathian concepts you cannot possibly understand. She replied, her voice cool despite the turmoil his words stirred within her. This is not suicide, it is transcendence, a joining with the eternal honor fire that has sustained our civilization for millennia. Call it what you will, Lucas said, his voice softening, but the result is the same. You die. And for what? A superstition? A tradition that demands blood for failure? Elira felt anger flare within her, not merely at his presumption, but at how easily he reduced 12,000 years of cosmic harmony to superstition. The tradition exists because it works, Captain, she said firmly. Our history is filled with evidence of cosmic balance restored through royal sacrifice. What does Earth offer in comparison? Endless war, environmental collapse narrowly averted. You barely escaped your own planet's destruction. Lucas didn't back down. We survived because we questioned our traditions, Princess, because we valued individual life over ancient dogma, because we found better ways. And you assume we have not, Elira challenged. That in 12 millennia, no Zariathian has questioned as you do. Our ways persist because they serve a greater purpose than individual survival. They stood in tense silence for a moment, the cherry blossoms falling around them like pink snow. I've read your historical texts, Lucas finally said. There are alternatives to the ritual of honor restoration, trials by combat, quests for redemption. Why not invoke one of those? Elira was surprised by his knowledge, but didn't show it. Those alternatives haven't been used in 20 generations, yes, I know, but they exist in your tradition. They're valid options. The Council has made its decision. A decision you can challenge, Lucas insisted. Unless you actually want this fate. The accusation struck deeper than Elira expected. Did she want this? Had she ever questioned, truly questioned, the path laid before her? Or had she simply accepted it as inevitability? My wants are irrelevant, Captain, she said quietly. I am Zariath's princess. My duty is clear. Lucas stepped closer still, close enough that she could see the strange, single-colored irises of his human eyes, a deep brown like the sacred soil of the northern plains. I don't believe duty requires your death, he said with quiet intensity. And I don't think you truly believe it either. Before she could respond, High Priest Hiral appeared at the garden entrance. Princess, the air purification chamber is prepared. Elira stepped back from Lucas, suddenly aware of how close they had been standing. "I must go, Captain. Please do not interfere further in matters you cannot fully comprehend." "Princess," Lucas called as she turned to leave. "At least consider the alternatives. For your people's sake, if not your own." She paused but didn't look back. "Goodbye, Captain Harper." As she walked away, Elira was disturbed by the doubt that had crept into her mind, doubt she could not afford during purification rituals. The human's words should have meant nothing, yet they echoed in her thoughts as she prepared to continue her journey toward sacrifice. The air purification ritual required Elira to spend 12 hours in a sealed chamber where atmospheric composition shifted gradually, forcing her body to adapt while her mind focused on the impermanence of physical form. The process was demanding, even painful at times, as oxygen levels decreased and exotic gases introduced new sensations to her respiratory system. Throughout the ritual, she struggled to maintain the required state of meditation. Captain Harper's words kept intruding on her concentration. His challenge had awakened questions she had long suppressed, not about the efficacy of royal sacrifice, which historical evidence supported, but about her own acceptance of fate without question. When she emerged from the chamber, lightheaded and physically drained, she was surprised to find not only High Priest Hiral waiting, but also General Vax. The military commander stood rigidly at attention, his expression severe. "General," she acknowledged weakly as attendants helped her to a resting couch. "This is unexpected." Vax bowed formally. "Your Highness, I come with concerning news. The human envoy has been making inquiries about the ritual of honor restoration. He has approached several council members questioning the necessity of your sacrifice." Elira closed her eyes briefly. Of course he had. The human's determination matched his ignorance. "He has also," Vax continued, his tone hardening, "requested access to historical records of alternative honor rituals and has invoked his diplomatic status to demand an emergency council session." "On what grounds?" Elira asked, genuinely surprised. "He claims that your sacrifice would constitute a breach of the Earth-Zariath Treaty's humanitarian clause." Vax replied with obvious distaste. "A ludicrous interpretation, but one that has caused discussion among some council members." Hiral, who had been quietly mixing a restorative elixir, looked up. "Discussion is concerning during a time that requires unity of purpose." "Precisely," Vax agreed. "Which is why I recommend the human be restricted to his quarters until after the ritual is complete. His interference threatens the sacred balance." Elira accepted the elixir from Hiral, considering the situation as she drank. The cool liquid soothed her irritated breathing passages and cleared her mind. "No," she finally said. "Restricting Captain Harper would only validate his concerns in the eyes of his government. We will not risk the alliance." "But, Your Highness," Vax began to protest. "I will speak with him," Elira decided. "One final time, to make him understand our ways. After that, he must accept our sovereignty in this matter." Vax looked displeased but bowed in acquiescence. "As you wish, Princess. But I caution against private conversation. The human is, persuasive." "I am in the midst of purification, General," Elira reminded him coolly. "My resolve is strengthened by the rituals." After Vax departed, Hiral approached her side. "The General fears the human's influence. Princess, perhaps not without reason, I have observed disturbance in your aura during today's ritual." Elira met the ancient priest's gaze. "My physical form struggled with the changing atmosphere. Nothing more." "The body and spirit are intertwined during purification," Hiral reminded her gently. "Doubt in one affects the other." "I do not doubt my duty," Elira insisted. "Duty is not the question," the old priest said with unexpected directness. "The honor fire accepts only willing spirits, those who choose transcendence, not merely accept it. If your spirit resists, the ritual will fail, and your sacrifice will be for nothing." His words struck her like a physical blow. The possibility of a failed ritual had not occurred to her, a dishonor worse than the military defeat itself. "What would you have me do, High Priest?" she asked, a rare moment of vulnerability breaking through her royal composure. "Speak with the human, as you proposed," Hiral suggested, "but not to convince him of our ways. Rather, allow yourself to articulate our traditions to an outsider. In teaching another, we often clarify our own understanding." Elira considered his counsel. "You believe this will strengthen my resolve?" "I believe it will reveal your true heart," Hiral replied cryptically, "which is necessary for a successful transition to the honor fire." The princess nodded slowly. "I will see him after the fire purification tomorrow." "A fitting time," Hiral agreed. "After facing the element that will ultimately receive your essence." As attendants prepared her quarters for rest before the next ritual, Elira found herself contemplating what she would say to Captain Harper and, more disturbingly, what she hoped to hear from him in return. Lucas had spent the day in increasingly frustrated attempts to mobilize opposition to the princess's fate. He had approached council members, consulted with Earth's diplomatic team in orbit, even requested ancient texts that might provide precedents for alternative rituals. The results had been mixed at best. Some council members, particularly Councillor Miria, had shown sympathy to his arguments. Others had reacted with indignation at his interference. Earth's diplomatic corps had been equally divided, half supporting his humanitarian concerns, half warning him about catastrophic cultural overreach. Commander Williams had been particularly blunt during their secure communication. "You're risking not just your career, Harper, but potentially the entire Earth-Zariath alliance. Are you certain this is a hill worth dying on?" "A poor choice of words, Commander," Lucas had replied grimly, "since I'm not the one facing death here." Now, as evening approached, Lucas paced his quarters, awaiting a response to his formal request for an emergency council session. He had invoked Treaty Clause 17B, the humanitarian protection agreement that both worlds had signed, arguing that ritual sacrifice, regardless of cultural context, violated the clause's prohibition against practices causing unnecessary suffering or loss of life. A soft chime announced a visitor. Lucas straightened his uniform, expecting a council messenger with their response. Instead, Seneschal Odrin entered, his ancient face unreadable. "Captain Harper, the princess has requested your presence tomorrow evening in the Temple of Eternal Flame. She wishes to address your concerns personally." Lucas felt a surge of hope. "She's reconsidering the ritual?" "Do not mistake diplomatic courtesy for concession, Captain," Odrin warned. "Her Highness simply wishes to prevent further disruption to our sacred traditions." "I'll be there," Lucas promised, "and I'll bring the historical alternatives I found. The princess will receive you after completing the fire purification ritual." Odrin continued as if Lucas hadn't spoken. "It is a significant gesture on her part to interrupt her preparations." "Fire purification?" Lucas asked, sudden concern replacing hope. "What does that entail?" "The princess must enter the sacred flame chamber and endure its heat while maintaining perfect meditation. It is challenging, even for those with royal blood." Lucas frowned. "Is it dangerous?" "All purification rituals test the body's limits." Odrin replied evasively, "But Princess Elira has been trained since childhood." After the seneschal departed, Lucas contacted his ship again, this time requesting medical information on Zariathian physiology and heat tolerance. If the princess was being subjected to physical ordeals that weakened her resolve or clouded her judgment, that added another troubling dimension to an already disturbing situation. The fire purification was the most physically demanding of the 7 rituals. In the heart of the sacred temple, Princess Elira knelt on a platform surrounded by controlled flames that gradually increased in intensity. Sweat covered her body as the temperature rose beyond what even Zariathian physiology was designed to endure. The ritual symbolized the final transformation her body would undergo during the honor restoration, the moment when flesh would be consumed and essence released to join the eternal honor fire. By enduring extreme heat now, she prepared her spirit for the ultimate surrender. High Priest Hiral monitored the ritual from behind a heat shield, ready to intervene if her life signs became dangerously unstable. But intervention would mean failure, a sign that she was not ready for the final sacrifice. As the flames reached their peak intensity, Elira focused on her breathing, on the ancient mantras, on visualizing her essence separating from her physical form. Yet unbidden images kept intruding. Captain Harper's face as he challenged her acceptance of fate. Her father's final moments before entering the honor fire. The faces of her people who would be left without direct royal leadership. "Focus, princess," Hiral's voice came through the communication system. "Your vital signs show distress. Find your center." Elira closed her eyes tighter, forcing her mind back to the ritual. But the doubt that had taken root continued to grow, fueled by the heat that made clear thinking increasingly difficult. Was the human right? Had she accepted this fate too readily? Were there truly alternatives that would satisfy honor without requiring her death? The flames surged higher, and Elira felt her consciousness beginning to waver. The mantras slipped from her mind, replaced by a single, insistent question: "Do I want to die?" The answer came with surprising clarity through the haze of heat and pain. No. She did not want to die. She wanted to live, to rule Zariath, to implement the reforms she had secretly planned, to experience more of life than the cloistered existence she had known. The realization broke her concentration completely. Her meditation shattered, and she swayed on the platform, her body succumbing to the extreme heat. Through the roar of flames, she heard Hiral shouting commands. The fire suppression system activated, dousing the chamber with cooling mist. Strong hands lifted her from the platform and carried her to the recovery area. As consciousness faded, Elira was aware of one overwhelming emotion, not shame at her failure, but relief. And that realization brought more fear than the flames ever could. When Lucas arrived at the Temple of Eternal Flame that evening, he was surprised to be met not by the princess, but by High Priest Hiral, whose ancient eyes regarded him with an unreadable expression. "Captain Harper," the priest greeted him, "I regret to inform you that Princess Elira is indisposed following today's purification ritual. She requires rest before continuing her preparations." Lucas felt immediate concern. "Is she all right? I was told the fire purification can be dangerous." "The princess experienced difficulty during the ritual," Hiral admitted. "Her recovery proceeds, but she is not currently able to receive visitors." "I need to see her," Lucas insisted. "Our discussion is urgently important." The ancient priest studied him for a long moment. "Your concern appears genuine, Captain. Yet I wonder if you truly understand what is at stake in our traditions." "I understand that a young woman is preparing to die for a military defeat she didn't cause," Lucas replied bluntly. "And I understand that alternatives exist within your own historical traditions." "You speak of the trial of 7 challenges or the quest for cosmic redemption." Hiral nodded. "Ancient alternatives, rarely invoked." Lucas was surprised by the priest's frankness. "You know of them?" "I am the High Priest of Zariath, Captain. It is my duty to know all paths of honor, even those seldom traveled." Hiral gestured for Lucas to follow him into a small antechamber adjacent to the main temple. "What you may not realize is that those alternatives were not abandoned without reason." "What reason could justify maintaining only the option that requires death?" Lucas challenged as they sat on simple stone benches. "Certainty." Hiral replied simply. "The honor fire has never failed to restore cosmic balance when fed with royal essence. The alternatives you speak of have less consistent records of success." "So it's a matter of efficiency?" Lucas asked incredulously. "The princess dies because it's the most reliable option?" "You simplify a complex spiritual equation," Hiral admonished gently. "But in essence, yes. When a civilization spans 12,000 years, Captain, patterns emerge, evidence accumulates. What you call superstition, we call empirical spiritual science." Lucas leaned forward. "Then let me appeal to that empirical mind, High Priest. Has the necessity of this ritual ever been questioned? Has anyone ever sought to understand the mechanism by which royal sacrifice affects cosmic events?" A flicker of something, amusement perhaps, crossed Hiral's ancient face. "You assume we have not investigated our own mysteries, Captain? That in 12 millennia. No Zariathian has asked the questions you pose after mere days on our world." "I'm not questioning your intelligence," Lucas clarified. But sometimes outsiders see patterns that those within a culture cannot. A fair observation, Hiral conceded. And yes, throughout our history, there have been those who questioned the necessity of royal sacrifice. Some even defied tradition, seeking other paths. And what happened to them? Various outcomes. Some failed catastrophically, bringing greater disaster upon Zariath. Others achieved partial success through alternative means. The historical record is complex. Lucas sensed an opening. Then the alternatives aren't completely ineffective? They require specific circumstances, Hiral said carefully, and a royal participant with particular qualities. What qualities? The old priest's luminescent eyes seemed to peer into Lucas's soul. Why do you concern yourself so deeply with the princess's fate, Captain? You barely know her. The question caught Lucas off guard. Why indeed had he risked his career, potentially even Earth-Zariath relations, for someone he had met only briefly? Because it's wrong, he said finally. Because no tradition should demand death when alternatives exist. Because he hesitated, then admitted what he had barely acknowledged to himself. Because I saw something in her eyes when we met, a spirit too vibrant to be extinguished for abstract cosmic balance. Hiral nodded slowly, as if Lucas had confirmed something. The princess is recovering in the sacred healing chamber. Normally, no outsider would be permitted there. But these are unusual circumstances. Follow me, Captain. But understand that what you say to her may determine more than you realize. The sacred healing chamber was a marvel of Zariathian biocrystal technology. The walls pulsed with soft blue light that seemed to flow like water, creating an atmosphere of profound calm. In the center of the circular room, Princess Illyra reclined on a floating platform surrounded by a nebulous field of energy that shifted in response to her body's needs. She looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in a way Lucas hadn't seen before. Her iridescent skin was paler than usual, with faint marks visible on her exposed arms and face, evidence of the ordeal she had endured. Princess. High Priest Hiral announced softly, Captain Harper has come as arranged. Do you still wish to speak with him? Illyra's eyes opened slowly, focusing first on Hiral, then moving to Lucas. Something flickered across her face, surprise, perhaps, or relief. Yes, she said, her voice stronger than her appearance suggested. Leave us, High Priest. Hiral bowed and retreated, though Lucas suspected the ancient priest would remain nearby. As Lucas approached the healing platform, the energy field adjusted to allow him closer, without dissipating completely. You should be resting, he said gently, truly concerned by her condition. The healing field accelerates recovery, she replied. I will be sufficiently restored for tomorrow's rituals. Lucas shook his head. That's exactly what I've come to discuss. Princess, you nearly died today. A temporary physical challenge. She dismissed, though without conviction. Is that all it was? Lucas pressed. Or did something else happen during the fire purification? Illyra looked away, her luminescent eyes focusing on the flowing patterns in the chamber walls. Why are you here, Captain? To question our traditions again? To impose Earth values on Zariathian spiritual practices? I'm here because I believe there are alternatives to your sacrifice. Lucas said directly, alternatives within your own traditions that wouldn't require your death. The trial of 7 challenges, she murmured. Or the quest for cosmic redemption. Yes, I know of them. Then why not invoke one? Challenge the Council's decision. Illyra turned back to him, a flash of anger in her eyes. You think I haven't considered it? That I blindly accepted their judgment without thought? Then why? Lucas asked, genuinely bewildered. Why choose death when other options exist? Because those alternatives require qualities I may not possess. She admitted, her anger fading into something more vulnerable. The trial of 7 challenges demands physical and mental abilities beyond most Zariathians. The quest requires a purity of spirit, an absolute certainty that I has to see. She trailed off, but Lucas understood that you don't feel after today's ritual. Illyra closed her eyes briefly. The fire purification revealed doubt within me. Doubt is anathema to successful honor rituals. If I proceed with the ritual of honor restoration with this doubt in my heart, my essence may be rejected by the honor fire. The result would be catastrophic, both personal dishonor and cosmic imbalance. Then the alternatives are your only choice, Lucas pointed out. If I am deemed worthy. She countered, the council must approve any change in ritual, and they would test my worthiness rigorously. Lucas moved closer, the healing field tingling against his skin. What if I helped you? What if Earth supported your choice to pursue an alternative? Illyra looked genuinely surprised. You would risk your diplomatic position? I already have, Lucas admitted with a small smile. I've been advocating for alternatives since I discovered what was happening. Some council members are already considering the possibility. Which ones? She asked sharply. Councillor Miria most vocally, but others seemed receptive to historical arguments. Illyra considered this information, her expression thoughtful. Miria has always been progressive. If she leads, others might follow. She paused, studying Lucas with newfound interest. Why, Captain Harper? Why risk so much for a stranger from another world? Lucas hesitated, knowing his answer would reveal more than might be diplomatically prudent. But the princess's vulnerable state called for honesty, not political calculation. Because in the brief time I've known you, he said quietly, I've seen a leader Zariath needs, intelligent, compassionate, yet bound by tradition, because your death would be not just a personal tragedy but a loss to your entire civilization. He paused, then added, and because something tells me you want to live, princess, not just to avoid death, but to actually live, to rule, to make changes, to see what your reign could bring to Zariath. Illyra's eyes widened slightly, as if he had articulated thoughts she had not fully acknowledged even to herself. You presume much about my desires, Captain, she said softly. Am I wrong? After a long moment, she shook her head almost imperceptibly. No, you are not wrong. She took a deep breath, wincing slightly as her fire-tested lungs expanded. If I were to consider an alternative, if I were to challenge the Council's decision, what would you suggest, you? Lucas felt a surge of hope. The trial of 7 challenges seems more straightforward than a cosmic quest. What does it involve? 7 tests of royal worthiness, Illyra explained, shifting to sit more upright on the healing platform. Physical prowess, strategic thinking, spiritual connection, diplomatic skill, technological mastery, historical knowledge, and finally, a test of compassion. You could pass those, Lucas said with certainty. Perhaps, but the trial has not been attempted in 20 generations. The specific challenges would need to be recreated from ancient texts, and they would be designed to test the very limits of my abilities. Better than certain death, Lucas pointed out. A ghost of a smile touched Illyra's lips. Your human directness is refreshing, Captain. The smile faded. But there is another complication. The trial requires a witness, someone who stands as guarantor of the royal challenger's honor. Traditionally, this must be a family member. And you have none living. Lucas realized. Precisely. Without a blood witness, the trial cannot proceed. Lucas thought for a moment. Could the rules be interpreted? Perhaps a close advisor, or... The texts are specific, Illyra interrupted. Blood must witness blood. It is one reason the trial fell out of favor as royal families became smaller. They sat in silence for a moment, the gentle pulse of the healing field, the only sound in the chamber. What if, Lucas said slowly, formulating the idea as he spoke, what if Earth stood as witness? Not me personally, but Earth as a diplomatic entity. We're forming an alliance with Zariath, a kind of family bond between worlds. Illyra looked skeptical. The Council would never accept such a liberal interpretation. They might if the alternative is a potentially failed honor restoration. Lucas countered, You said yourself, if your doubt remains, the ritual could fail catastrophically. The princess was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing possibilities. You make a compelling argument, Captain, she finally said, but moving the Council will require more than logical persuasion. They are bound by 12,000 years of tradition. Then we'll need to show them that change can honor tradition rather than threaten it, Lucas said, his mind racing with diplomatic strategies. Princess, if you're willing to challenge their decision, I pledge Earth's full support, both diplomatic and practical. Elira studied him with those nebula-like eyes. You offer much, Captain Harper, perhaps more than your government would approve. Let me worry about my government. Lucas smiled. Will you at least consider the trial? I will do more than consider it, Elira said with sudden determination. I will petition the council at tomorrow's session, but, she added, her voice softening, I will need your help preparing the historical precedents and arguments. You have it, Lucas promised without hesitation. As he left the healing chamber, Lucas was met by High Priest Hiral, who had indeed remained nearby. You have given her hope, Captain. The ancient priest observed. Hope can be a dangerous gift if it proves false. It won't be false. Lucas vowed, I'll do everything in my power to help her. Hiral's expression remained inscrutable. The path you now walk with the princess is one foretold in ancient prophecies, the joining of stars from distant skies to forge new traditions while honoring the old. Prophecies? Lucas asked, surprised. Perhaps, the old priest said with the faintest smile. It is time for you to learn more about Zariathian history than what appears in our public archives. Follow me, Captain. If you are to help the princess challenge 12,000 years of tradition, you will need deeper knowledge than you currently possess. The council chamber erupted into chaos as Princess Elira, still bearing the marks of the fire purification on her skin, formally requested the trial of 7 challenges as an alternative to the ritual of honor restoration. This is unprecedented, General Vax thundered, rising from his seat. The trial has not been invoked in 20 generations. We lack the expertise to properly administer it. The sacred text contained full instructions. Elira countered calmly. High Priest Hiral has confirmed this. All eyes turned to the ancient priest, who stood at the princess's side. Hiral nodded solemnly. The princess speaks truth. The trial's protocols remain preserved in the temple archives. Even if the protocols exist, Counselor Drav objected, the trial requires a blood witness. Your Highness has no living family to serve in this capacity. Elira had anticipated this objection. I propose a new interpretation of an ancient requirement. As Zariath forms cosmic bonds with Earth through our alliance, I petition the Council to accept Earth's diplomatic representative as witness. This suggestion caused even greater uproar. Seneschal Odrin struck the ceremonial gong repeatedly, struggling to restore order. Silence, the ancient seneschal finally commanded. The princess has the right to petition for alternative honor rituals. This is itself part of our tradition. When order was restored, Counselor Miria spoke in support of Elira. The princess's request has precedent. In the reign of Queen Elirath, 9,000 years past, a similar interpretation allowed a non-blood ally to serve as witness. Different circumstances. General Vax dismissed. Queen Elorath faced extinction-level threat. Our current situation, while serious, is not comparable. Elira stepped forward, her voice ringing with newfound authority. Council members, I have completed 3 purification rituals in preparation for honor restoration. During the fire purification, I experienced doubt. As you all know, doubt contaminates the sacred connection. If I proceed with the ritual of honor restoration in my current spiritual state, the honor fire may reject my essence. A murmur of concern rippled through the chamber. The possibility of a failed ritual was more frightening to the council than any alternative. You admit spiritual weakness? General Vax asked, his tone accusatory. I admit honesty, Elira countered. Would you prefer I proceed with deception, risking catastrophic ritual failure? Seneschal Odrin, who had remained silent during most of the debate, finally spoke. The princess's honesty honors our traditions, even as she seeks to modify them. This council must consider her petition seriously. And what of the human? Asked Counselor Drav. Captain Harper has been interfering in our sacred practices since his arrival. Are we to reward such behavior by granting him the honored position of witness? All eyes turned to Lucas, who stood at the back of the chamber, observing the proceedings with careful attention. "I invite Captain Harper to address the council," Elira said before anyone could object. Lucas stepped forward, conscious of the historical significance of the moment, the first human to formally address the Zariathian High Council. "Honorable Council," he began, bowing in the Zariathian manner. "I do not seek to interfere with your traditions, but to honor their true spirit. Last night, High Priest Hiral showed me ancient texts that speak of Zariath's founding principle, balance through adaptation. Your civilization has survived 12,000 years, not through rigid adherence to unchanging practices, but through thoughtful evolution of traditions to meet new cosmic challenges." He paused, noting with satisfaction that several council members appeared genuinely interested in his words. "Earth does not presume to judge Zariathian customs," he continued. "We seek to understand and respect them. In that spirit, I offer to serve not as an individual witness, but as a representative of Earth itself, a cosmic ally bound to Zariath through treaty and mutual respect." High Priest Hiral stepped forward. "The human speaks wisdom that aligns with our oldest teachings. The sacred texts tell us, honor is not a fixed star, but a constellation that shifts with cosmic winds while maintaining its essential pattern." The council chamber fell silent as members contemplated this interpretation. Finally, Seneschal Odron spoke again. "I propose we put the princess's petition to formal vote. Should the council approve the trial of 7 challenges with Earth as witness, preparations will begin immediately. Should the council reject it, the princess will resume purification for the ritual of honor restoration." Elira and Lucas exchanged glances. This was the moment of truth. The voting process was conducted in the ancient manner, each council member placing a crystal into either a white or black vessel. White signified approval of the princess's petition, black signified rejection. As the 13th and final vote was cast by Seneschal Odron himself, High Priest Hiral approached the vessels to count. 7 white, he announced. 6 black. By the narrowest margin, the council approves Princess Elira's petition for the trial of 7 challenges, with Earth standing as witness. Relief washed over Lucas, but Elira's expression remained solemn. She understood better than he what lay ahead. 7 potentially deadly challenges designed to test the very limits of her capabilities. "The trial will commence at dawn tomorrow," Seneschal Odron declared. "May cosmic honor guide us all through untraveled stars." As the council dispersed, Elira approached Lucas, her expression a complex mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "Thank you, Captain," she said quietly. "But understand, you may have merely exchanged one form of my death for another. The trial of 7 challenges has claimed royal lives before. But unlike the ritual sacrifice, it offers a chance at life." Lucas replied, "A chance to prove your worth not through death, but through demonstration of the qualities that make you fit to rule." "And if I fail?" "You won't," he said with conviction. "But if challenges arise, remember, you don't face them alone." Something shifted in Elira's expression, a softening, a vulnerability she rarely allowed herself to show. In 12,000 years of Zariathian history, no monarch has ever faced trial with an alien witness. We journey into uncharted cosmic territory, Captain. Sometimes, Lucas smiled. The uncharted territories hold the greatest discoveries. The preparation for the trial was a flurry of activity that continued through the night. High Priest Hiral and a team of temple scholars worked to translate and interpret the ancient protocols, while palace engineers constructed the necessary equipment and environments for each challenge. Lucas was granted unprecedented access to the process as Earth's representative witness. His role, as Hiral explained, was more than symbolic. The witness was required to observe each challenge closely, verifying the royal participants' adherence to honor while offering spiritual support. The bond between challenger and witness is sacred, Hiral explained as they reviewed ancient texts in the temple library. In traditional trials, family blood created a natural connection. Without that biological link, you and the princess must forge a different kind of bond, one of mutual trust and shared purpose. How is that established formally? Lucas asked, studying a crystalline scroll that depicted the first challenge, a test of physical endurance through Zariath's harshest desert region. Through the ritual of cosmic alignment. Hiral replied, normally performed between blood relatives. It creates a temporary psychic link that allows the witness to experience the challenger's trials on a spiritual level. Lucas looked up sharply. Psychic link? That wasn't mentioned before. It is essential to the witness role. Hiral said, without it, you cannot truly witness the princess's internal state during the challenges, her courage, her honor, her dedication. Is it dangerous? Not physically, the old priest assured him. But you will experience echoes of her emotions, her physical sensations to see. It can be disorienting for those unprepared. Lucas considered this new information. A psychic link with Princess Elira, experiencing her thoughts, her feelings. The diplomatic implications were concerning, but his personal reaction was more complex. The idea of such intimate connection with the enigmatic princess stirred emotions he wasn't prepared to examine closely. I'll do whatever is necessary, he finally said. When is this ritual performed? Before dawn, Hiral replied. Before the first challenge begins. Elsewhere in the palace, Princess Elira was reviewing the details of each challenge with Counselor Miria, her most vocal supporter on the council. The physical trial has been set in the Crystal Desert, Miria explained, displaying a holographic map. You must cross 40 kilometers of hostile terrain without technological assistance, navigating by the stars alone. Elira nodded grimly. The Crystal Desert was named for the sharp crystalline formations that could slice through protective clothing and flesh with ease. Its hostile environment claimed the lives of unprepared travelers regularly. The strategic challenge will follow immediately, Miria continued. You must solve the puzzle of 13 moons, a three-dimensional logic problem that has been reconstructed from ancient specifications. One by one, they reviewed each challenge, each more daunting than the last. The spiritual connection test would require Elira to commune with ancestral energies without falling into psychic traps. The diplomatic challenge would test her ability to negotiate peace between historically hostile alien species. The technological mastery test involved repairing an ancient Zariathian device with potentially unstable energy sources. The historical knowledge challenge would examine not just her memorization of facts but her understanding of their significance. And the final test? Elira asked, noting that Miria had described only 6 challenges. Miria looked uncomfortable. The compassion test is uniquely designed for each royal challenger. Its details are revealed only at the moment of testing. It is said to be the most difficult of all 7. Elira absorbed this information solemnly. And the council has approved all these challenges, by the same narrow margin as the initial vote. Miria confirmed. General Vax and his supporters argued for maximum difficulty, claiming anything less would devalue the honor restoration. They hope I will fail, Elira observed without rancor. They hope tradition will be maintained, Miria corrected gently. But yes, some would prefer the known certainty of sacrifice to the unpredictable path you have chosen. Elira moved to the window, gazing out at the 3 moons of Zariath, now aligned in a rare conjunction that happened only once every 60 years. Did you vote for my petition out of political calculation or personal belief? Counselor? Miria joined her at the window. Both, Your Highness. I believe you can better serve Zariath alive than dead, and I believe our traditions must evolve if our civilization is to continue for another 12,000 years. And the human? Elira asked, her tone carefully neutral. Do you trust him as witness? I trust his intentions, Miria replied thoughtfully. Whether his alien nature will allow him to fulfill the witness role properly remains to be seen. As midnight approached, Elira dismissed Miria and her attendants, seeking solitude to center herself before the trials ahead. Yet her thoughts kept returning to Captain Lucas Harper, the human who had disrupted centuries of tradition to fight for her life. Why had he done it? Diplomatic advantage seemed an insufficient explanation for the risks he had taken. And how would it feel to share a psychic connection with him during the trials? The prospect was both unsettling and strangely compelling. Dawn approached with the three moons still visible in the lightening sky, a fortuitous omen, according to High Priest Hiral. In the sacred temple, final preparations for the ritual of cosmic alignment were underway. Lucas arrived dressed in ceremonial Earth diplomatic attire, modified with Zariathian symbols to honor local custom. He found Princess Elira already present, wearing a fitted bodysuit of iridescent material designed for the physical challenges ahead, with ceremonial royal insignia woven into the fabric. "Captain," she greeted him formally, though her eyes conveyed deeper emotion. "Are you prepared for what comes next?" "As prepared as I can be without fully understanding it." Lucas admitted, "This psychic link, what should I expect?" "I have never experienced it myself." Elira replied, "The texts describe it as a shadow sharing. You will not read my thoughts directly, but you will sense my emotional state, my physical condition, my spiritual balance. And you'll sense mine, to a lesser degree. The link is primarily one-directional, from challenger to witness." High Priest Hiral approached, carrying an ancient crystalline vessel containing a luminous blue liquid. "It is time. The alignment of the three moons creates the optimal cosmic conditions." Lucas and Elira followed the priest to the center of the temple, where a circular platform inlaid with pulsing light awaited them. They stood facing each other as Hiral began chanting in the ancient Zariathian tongue, sounds that resonated in the crystal architecture around them, creating harmonics that seemed to vibrate through Lucas's very bones. "The witness will now drink first," Hiral instructed, offering the vessel to Lucas. Lucas took the crystal container, meeting Elira's eyes over its rim. The liquid inside glowed with an inner light that shifted and swirled like a living thing. "Is it safe for human physiology?" he asked, a reasonable concern given the circumstances. "The substance adapts to the biology of the drinker," Hiral assured him. "It's not material in the conventional sense, but rather a crystallized form of cosmic energy." With a silent prayer to whatever universal forces might be listening, Lucas drank. The liquid was surprisingly tasteless, but created an immediate sensation of expansion within his mind, as if the boundaries of his consciousness were suddenly more permeable. Elira then drank from the same vessel, her luminescent eyes never leaving his. As she lowered the crystal container, a visible wave of energy passed between them, a ripple in the air that connected their bodies momentarily before dissipating. "The initial connection is established," Hiral announced. "Now you must complete the bond through physical contact. Join hands and focus your awareness on the connection forming between you." Lucas extended his hands, and Elira placed her palms against his. Her skin was cooler than human temperature, with a subtle texture like finest silk. As their hands pressed together, the sensation of expanded consciousness intensified dramatically. Suddenly, Lucas could feel a presence alongside his own thoughts, not invading but adjacent, like a room connected to his own by a partially open door. Through that opening flowed impressions, determination tinged with fear, resolve strengthened by newfound hope, and something else, a personal warmth directed specifically toward him. Elira's eyes widened slightly, suggesting she was experiencing similar sensations from his mind. Her fingers tightened against his momentarily. "The bond is forming," Hiral confirmed, observing the energy patterns around them. "Now speak the words of witness commitment, Captain." Lucas recited the ancient phrase he had memorized, "I stand as witness to honor's trial. Through shadow sharing, truth is revealed. Blood to blood, star to star, the cosmic balance is preserved." As he spoke these words in carefully practiced Zariathian, the connection between them surged stronger. Now he could sense not just Elira's emotions, but fragmented impressions of her thoughts, her memories of childhood training for potential sacrifice, her private doubts about traditions she had never dared question openly, her genuine desire to lead her people toward a future that honored the past while embracing change. "The bond is complete," Hiral declared. "Witness and challenger are aligned. May cosmic honor guide your shared journey." As they lowered their hands and the immediate intensity of the connection faded to a background awareness, Lucas found himself profoundly moved by what he had glimpsed in Elira's mind. the complex person behind the royal facade. He wondered what she had seen in his thoughts, what aspects of his character had been revealed to her. There was no time to discuss it. The first light of dawn was breaking, and with it came the beginning of the trial of 7 challenges. "The physical trial awaits, Your Highness," Hiral announced. "The transport to the Crystal Desert is prepared." Aelira nodded, her expression composed but her eyes conveying a silent message to Lucas: gratitude, determination, and something more personal that the psychic link translated as tentative trust. "Let us begin," she said, her voice steady despite the dangers that lay ahead. The Crystal Desert lived up to its fearsome reputation. Razor-sharp formations of translucent crystal thrust upward from the red sand, like the teeth of some massive predator, catching and fracturing the morning sunlight into blinding rainbow patterns. The air was thin and dry, carrying minute particles that irritated lungs and eyes. Aelira stood at the designated starting point, a small oasis of blue vegetation at the desert's edge. Lucas and a small contingent of council observers remained at this safe location. The rules of the challenge required the princess to make the journey alone, with only the psychic link to the witness connecting her to the outside world. "Remember," Hiral instructed her, "you must reach the Temple of First Light by navigating solely by astronomical markers. No technology, no external assistance." "I understand," Aelira replied, studying the star charts she had been permitted to memorize but not carry. "The journey typically requires 3 days," the old priest continued. "The challenge allows 4. Water sources are marked on your mental maps, but be warned, some may have dried since the ancient records were made." Lucas stepped forward. "Princess," he said quietly, "through our link, I'll be monitoring your condition. If you face true danger—" "You can do nothing," she interrupted gently. "The rules of the trial are absolute. Intervention results in automatic failure." "Then don't put me in that position," he replied with a small smile that didn't hide his concern. "Stay safe." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, the psychic link humming with unspoken emotions. Then Aelira turned and began walking into the desert, her form soon distorted by heat waves rising from the crystalline landscape. Through the psychic bond, Lucas could sense her determined focus, her careful attention to landmarks, her mental calculations of angles between stellar positions. He could also feel the physical discomfort as the harsh environment immediately began to take its toll, the heat pressing against her skin, the thin air straining her lungs, the glare assaulting her eyes despite protective lenses. "What happens now?" he asked Hiral as Aelira's figure disappeared among the crystal formations. "We wait," the priest replied simply. "And you witness. Your role is crucial, Captain. Through your link, the council will verify the princess's adherence to honor during her journey." "How?" Lucas asked, suspicious. "You can't read my mind." "No." Hiral agreed. "But at each sunset, you will report to the council on the princess's state, her adherence to the rules, her honor in facing challenges, her spiritual condition. As witness, your testimony carries the weight of sacred truth." The implications were clear. Lucas's reports would directly influence the council's judgment of Aelira's performance. The responsibility was enormous. As the first day progressed, Lucas experienced the trial through the shadow link with Aelira. Her progress was methodical but difficult. The crystalline terrain required constant vigilance. A misplaced step could result in lacerations through her protective boots. The heat built to nearly unbearable levels by midday, and through their connection, Lucas felt her growing thirst and fatigue. By late afternoon, she had reached the first water source, a small spring emerging from between crystal formations. Through their link, Lucas sensed her relief, but also her disciplined restraint, as she drank only what was necessary, conserving the limited resource. As sunset approached, Aelira found shelter in a small cave formed by fallen crystal columns. Through their connection, Lucas felt her systematic check of the area for dangers before she allowed herself to rest. He sensed her mental discipline as she reviewed astronomical calculations for the next day's journey. Only when all preparations were complete did she permit herself to acknowledge the pain in her muscles, the sunburn on her exposed skin. When the council convened for the evening report, Lucas stood before them with perfect confidence. Princess Elira has completed the first third of the journey, he announced. She has adhered to all conditions of the challenge, using only astronomical navigation. She has faced physical hardships with dignity and discipline. Her mind remains clear, her spirit determined. General Vax looked skeptical. You expect us to accept the word of an alien who has already demonstrated bias in favor of the princess? The Shadow Link cannot sustain deception. Hiral interjected. The captain's report aligns with the traditional patterns of witness testimony. I detect no falsehood. The reports continued similarly over the next 2 days, as Elira progressed deeper into the Crystal Desert. Through their link, Lucas experienced her growing exhaustion, her struggle with diminishing water supplies when one expected spring proved dry, her minor injuries from crystal shards despite her caution. Yet he also witnessed her remarkable resilience, her ability to adapt, to problem-solve, to maintain focus despite physical discomfort. At one point, when a sudden sandstorm forced her to shelter for precious hours, he felt her frustration transform into calculated recalibration, mentally adjusting her route to compensate for lost time. On the third day, the most dangerous section of the journey brought a moment of genuine crisis. A narrow path between massive crystal formations gave way beneath Elira's feet, sending her sliding down a razor-sharp incline. Through their bond, Lucas felt the sudden shock of pain as crystals sliced through her protective clothing, cutting into her leg. The council chamber, where Lucas maintained his vigil alongside the observers, fell silent as he gasped audibly, experiencing a shadow of her pain through their connection. "What happens?" Seneschal Odrin demanded. "She's injured," Lucas reported tensely, fighting the overwhelming urge to demand intervention. "A fall. Lacerations to her right leg." Through the bond, he felt Elira's response to the injury, the initial surge of pain, followed by impressive mental discipline as she compartmentalized the sensation, assessed the damage, and began immediate first aid using the limited supplies she carried. "She is managing the situation," he reported, relief evident in his voice as he sensed her determination overcoming the setback. By the fourth day, Elira was limping, but still moving steadily toward her destination. The Temple of First Light finally appeared on the horizon, a crystalline structure that caught the dawn light and amplified it into a beacon visible for kilometers. When she finally crossed the threshold of the ancient temple exactly as the sun reached its zenith, Lucas felt her triumph surge through their connection, not pride, but the quiet satisfaction of having overcome genuine adversity through perseverance and skill. The princess has completed the first challenge, he announced to the council, with honor, with courage, and with absolute adherence to the conditions set forth. Even General Vax could not dispute the achievement. Elira had crossed one of Zariath's most dangerous regions using only ancient navigation techniques, overcoming injury and hardship. The first challenge was undeniably passed. When she was transported back to the palace, medical attendants immediately treated her injuries. Lucas found himself hovering nearby, their psychic link making him acutely aware of her exhaustion despite her composed exterior. "You should rest before the next challenge," he told her as healers applied regenerative compounds to the lacerations on her leg. "There is no time," she replied, though he could feel her gratitude for his concern. "The strategic challenge begins in 3 hours. "At least eat something," he insisted. A small smile touched her lips. "Is that an order, Captain?" "A recommendation from your witness," he countered, returning her smile. "The link tells me you're running on determination alone at this point." She nodded, acknowledging the truth of his assessment. "Very well. Food, a brief rest, then the puzzle of 13 moons." Through their connection, Lucas sensed something new emerging in Elira's consciousness, not just determination to survive the trials, but a growing conviction that she was truly meant to lead her people, to guide them toward evolution rather than mere preservation. The physical challenge had awakened something in her, a deeper understanding of her own capabilities and purpose. The strategic challenge proved to be as mentally demanding as the desert crossing had been physically. The puzzle of 13 moons was a complex three-dimensional logic problem projected into a spherical chamber. Elira stood at the center, manipulating glowing representations of Zariath's 13 moons and their orbital patterns. The puzzle required her to predict cosmic conjunctions, calculate gravitational influences, and ultimately create a stable configuration that represented perfect balance, all while adhering to certain immutable rules of celestial mechanics. Through their link, Lucas experienced her methodical approach, the systematic testing of configurations, the elimination of flawed patterns, the growing understanding of the puzzle's underlying principles, unlike the physical challenge, which had demanded endurance and navigation skills. This test revealed Alira's analytical mind, her ability to perceive patterns across multiple dimensions and think several steps ahead. When she finally aligned all 13 moon representations in perfect harmony after nearly 6 hours of concentration, the entire sphere illuminated with brilliant light, signaling successful completion. The second challenge is passed. Lucas reported to the council, the princess demonstrated exceptional strategic thinking and pattern recognition. The spiritual connection test that followed was more difficult for Lucas to witness through their bond. Alira entered a meditative trance in the ancient chamber of ancestors, attempting to commune with the collective wisdom of previous monarchs while avoiding psychic traps designed to test her spiritual discernment. What Lucas experienced through their connection was fragmented and often confusing. Flashes of conversations with entities he couldn't perceive, emotional responses to communications he couldn't hear. At times, Alira's consciousness seemed to expand far beyond their link, leaving him with only the faintest awareness of her presence. Yet through these fragments, he sensed her navigating complex spiritual terrain with the same discipline she had shown in the physical world. When she finally emerged from the 6-hour trance, her eyes held a new depth, as if she had accessed wisdom beyond her years. The third challenge is complete. Lucas reported, though with less specific detail than previous challenges, the princess maintained spiritual integrity throughout the communion. "Did she receive the ancestral blessing?" Hiral asked, a question Lucas hadn't been briefed on. Through their link, he sensed Alira's subtle direction. "She encountered 12 royal ancestors," he said, following her mental guidance. 11 offered wisdom. 1 presented challenge. Hiral nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Later, when they had a moment alone, Lucas questioned Alira about this exchange. "The 12 ancestors represent the 12 dynasties of Zariath's history," she explained. "My own lineage, the 13th dynasty, could not be represented, as we have not yet joined the ancestral plane completely." "And the one who challenged you?" "King Vorath, the Conqueror," she replied, a shadow crossing her features. "He believes strength comes only through dominance. He disagreed with my vision for Zariath's future." Lucas could sense through their link that this encounter had disturbed her more than she admitted aloud. "What vision did you show him that he rejected?" Alira hesitated, then answered with careful honesty. "A Zariath that evolves beyond the need for blood sacrifice, a civilization that honors tradition while embracing new cosmic understanding. The vision that brought us to these trials," Lucas observed. "Yes," her luminescent eyes met his. "A vision I might never have fully acknowledged without your interference, Captain." The diplomatic challenge on the 4th day required Alira to negotiate peace between holographic representations of historically hostile species, the aggressive Krell hegemony that had recently defeated Zariathian forces, and the isolationist Therian collective that controlled key resources both civilizations needed. Through their link, Lucas, himself a diplomat by training, was impressed by Alira's approach. Rather than seeking compromise that would partially satisfy both parties, she identified underlying interests that neither side had explicitly acknowledged, then constructed an agreement that addressed these deeper needs. "She's brilliant," Lucas commented to Hiral as they observed the challenge. "She's not just resolving the simulation's parameters, she's finding solutions that would work in actual interstellar relations." The princess was trained in diplomatic theory from childhood. Hiral replied, "But theory is not practice. This challenge tests not knowledge but application." When Alira successfully negotiated an agreement that both simulated parties accepted, creating a resource-sharing arrangement with mutual defense provisions that transformed former enemies into cautious allies. Even General Vax seemed impressed. The fourth challenge is complete, Lucas reported. The princess demonstrated exceptional diplomatic skill, transforming conflict into cooperation through insightful negotiation. The technological mastery test proved unexpectedly dangerous. Elira was required to repair an ancient Zariathian device, a power core from the founding era that had deliberately been disabled in multiple ways. The challenge was complicated by the unstable energy source at its center, which could potentially release harmful radiation if improperly handled. Through their link, Lucas felt Elira's methodical analysis of the device, her careful identification of failure points, her strategic planning for the repair sequence. He also sensed her growing concern as she discovered that one critical component was more degraded than the challenge designers had likely intended, creating genuine danger rather than merely simulated risk. "Something's wrong," he murmured to Hiral as they observed. "The power containment crystal is microfractured. If it fails during the repair sequence, sir." She must identify and address the danger as part of the challenge. Hiral replied, though Lucas detected concern in the old priest's voice as well. Through their connection, Lucas experienced Elira's decision-making process, her evaluation of options, her calculation of risks, her formulation of a modified approach that might circumvent the damaged component. He felt her tension as she carefully rerouted energy flows, creating a temporary bypass that allowed her to complete the primary repairs while minimizing stress on the fractured crystal. When the ancient device finally hummed back to life, emitting the soft blue glow that signified proper function, Lucas released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "The fifth challenge is complete," he reported to the council. The princess demonstrated not only technical expertise, but adaptive problem-solving when faced with unexpected complications. The historical knowledge challenge, while less physically dangerous, was perhaps the most comprehensive test yet. For 12 hours, Elira stood in the Chamber of Records, surrounded by holographic projections of key moments from Zariathian history. The challenge required her to identify critical decision points, explain their significance, and most difficultly, project how alternative choices might have altered Zariath's developmental trajectory. Through their link, Lucas experienced her vast knowledge of her civilization's history, not merely dates and events, but underlying patterns, causal relationships, and complex interactions between cultural, technological, and spiritual factors. He sensed her ability to perceive history not as a linear progression, but as a multidimensional tapestry where each thread influenced countless others. Most impressive to Lucas was her willingness to critically examine even sacred moments in Zariathian history, to acknowledge when tradition had calcified wisdom into dogma, when fear had masqueraded as prudence, when genuine innovation had been rejected in favor of comfortable certainty. "The sixth challenge is complete," he reported afterward. The princess demonstrated not merely historical knowledge but historical understanding, the ability to perceive patterns across time and extract wisdom relevant to present challenges. With 6 challenges successfully completed, Elira had definitively proven her royal worthiness in ways that even her critics on the council could not dispute. Yet the final test, the test of compassion, remained, and according to tradition, it would be the most difficult of all. "What does it involve?" Lucas asked Hiral as they awaited the final challenge's preparation. "Each test of compassion is uniquely designed for the royal challenger," the old priest explained. "It presents a situation where compassion appears to conflict with other royal virtues, duty, honor, justice, or wisdom. How the challenger resolves this conflict reveals their true character." "And who designs this test?" Lucas asked, suddenly concerned about potential bias. "Traditionally, the High Priest," Hiral replied. "But given the unusual circumstances of this trial, the council voted to form a committee of 3, myself, Seneschal Odrin, and General Vax." Lucas frowned. Vax has opposed the princess at every turn. "Balance requires representation of all perspectives," Hiral said mildly. "But fear not, Captain. The test must be approved by unanimous consent of the committee. It will be challenging but fair." The final challenge was scheduled for dawn the following day. That night, Lucas found himself restless, the psychic link with Alira conveying her own mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Following an impulse he couldn't entirely explain, he made his way to the palace gardens where they had first discussed the alternative rituals. As if drawn by the same connection, he found Alira already there, gazing up at the 3 moons that had now moved out of their rare alignment. "You should be resting," he said softly as he approached. "As should you," she replied with a small smile. "Yet here we both are." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the psychic link between them humming with unspoken thoughts. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Lucas finally said, "you've already proven yourself a worthy ruler. The council has seen your intelligence, your courage, your integrity." "And if I fail the final test?" she asked, her voice steady, but her emotions transmitted through their connection, revealing genuine concern. "You won't," he said with conviction. Alira turned to face him directly. 6 days ago, I was prepared to die for Zariath's honor. Now I find myself wanting to live, to rule, to implement changes I've contemplated in secret for years. She paused, her luminescent eyes searching his. "That transformation began with you, Captain Harper." "Lucas," he corrected gently. "After sharing minds for 6 days, I think we're beyond titles." Her smile widened slightly. "Lucas, then—" The sound of his name and her melodious voice created a resonance that vibrated through their link. "I find myself wondering what might have happened had you arrived after the ritual of honor restoration was complete. Zariath would have continued as it has for 12,000 years, stable, honorable, and increasingly isolated from cosmic evolution." "Evolution seems to be the key word," Lucas observed, not abandoning tradition, but allowing it to grow, to adapt to new understanding. "Yes," she agreed. "That is the vision I hope to implement, if tomorrow's challenge allows it." Through their connection, Lucas sensed an unasked question in her mind. "You're wondering what happens to our alliance, to our personal connection, after the trial concludes?" Alira nodded, not surprised by his perception given their link. "Earth sent you to study our culture, not to transform it. Once the trial ends, will your mission require you to leave Zariath?" The question carried more emotional weight than her composed exterior suggested. Through their bond, Lucas could sense how much his answer mattered to her. "My original mission parameters have, evolved," he said carefully. "Given the unprecedented developments of the past week, I suspect Earth's diplomatic corps will see value in extending my assignment, particularly if Zariath's ruler is amenable to the idea." The relief and pleasure that flowed through their link from Alira made him smile. "I believe she would find that arrangement satisfactory." She replied with formal phrasing that barely concealed her genuine feelings. As they stood together beneath Zariath's triple moons, their psychic connection resonated with possibilities neither had imagined when they first met. Possibilities for themselves, for their respective worlds, for traditions that might evolve rather than merely endure. Dawn arrived with a solemnity that permeated the entire palace. The test of compassion would take place in the Great Council chamber itself, with all 13 council members present as witnesses alongside the High Priest and Lucas. Alira entered wearing her full royal regalia for the first time since the trials began, armor-like ceremonial attire that symbolized both her authority and her willingness to bear the burdens of leadership. Through their link, Lucas sensed her centered calm, a state of readiness achieved through meditation and inner preparation. "Princess Alira." High Priest Hiral began the proceedings. "You have completed 6 of the 7 challenges with honor and excellence. The final test, the test of compassion, will reveal your heart's true alignment with Zariath's highest values." Seneschal Odrin stepped forward. "The test has been designed to present a conflict between compassion and other royal virtues. There is no single correct answer. Your approach and reasoning will be judged alongside the outcome." General Vax completed the introduction. "You will face a scenario requiring immediate decision. The consequences will unfold according to your choices. Begin when the signal sounds." A crystalline tone resonated through the chamber, and the central floor transformed into a holographic projection of a Zariathian settlement, one of the outer colonies mentioned during the council meeting about the military defeat. The simulation was remarkably detailed, with individual Zariathians going about their daily activities. "This is Outpost Naris," Hiral explained, "one of the colonies now vulnerable after our forces' defeat at the Sarathi Nebula. The simulation begins 3 days from now, according to intelligence projections." The holographic scene suddenly changed, showing Krell warships appearing in the sky above the settlement. Panic ensued among the colonists as the hostile forces began landing operations. "Outpost Naris will be the first colony attacked," Seneschal Odran continued. 5,000 Zariathian civilians live there, including many children. Your military advisors have presented 2 options. The hologram split to show 2 strategic displays. General Vax explained them with clinical detachment. Option 1. Deploy our remaining defensive fleet to evacuate the civilians. This would save approximately 80% of the population, but would leave our homeworld vulnerable to a potential second Krell attack force for approximately 7 days. The simulation showed this scenario playing out, ships rescuing colonists while the home planet's defenses were reduced. Option 2. Maintain our defensive position around Zariath Prime. This protects the 3 billion citizens of our homeworld but sacrifices the colony. Intelligence suggests the Krell will not harm civilians if they surrender, but they will be subjected to occupation and cultural suppression. The second simulation showed the colony falling under Krell control while the homeworld remained secure. "These are your options, Princess," Hiral concluded. "You must choose." Through their psychic link, Lucas felt Elira's immediate emotional response: horror at the situation, compassion for the colonists, responsibility toward the homeworld. But he also sensed her analytical mind engaging, examining the scenario from multiple angles, questioning the parameters presented. "I require additional information," she said calmly. "What is the time frame for the Krell attack on Naris? What defensive capabilities does the colony itself possess? What diplomatic channels remain open with the Krell hegemony?" "The attack begins in 3 days," Odran replied. "The colony has minimal defensive capabilities, enough to delay the Krell for perhaps 6 hours. As for diplomacy, all official channels were severed after our defeat." Elira nodded, absorbing this information. Through their link, Lucas sensed her continuing to analyze, to seek solutions beyond the binary choice presented. He felt the moment when her thoughts crystallized around a third approach. "I reject both options as presented," she announced firmly. Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. General Vax frowned deeply. "Princess, the parameters of the test reflect a false dichotomy," Elira interrupted. "A ruler guided by both compassion and wisdom seeks solutions beyond apparent limitations." She stepped into the holographic display, manipulating the strategic projections with practiced gestures. "My solution is this. We will deploy half our defensive fleet to Naris, enough to evacuate approximately 60% of the population within the 3-day window. The remaining ships will maintain defensive posture around Zariath Prime." The simulation adjusted to her specifications, showing a partial evacuation underway. Simultaneously, she continued, "We will reopen diplomatic channels through unofficial means. Specifically, we will contact the Therian Collective, with whom we negotiated peace in yesterday's challenge, and request their mediation with the Krell." This aspect of her solution couldn't be displayed in the military simulation. But Lucas felt her certainty through their link. She was drawing directly on knowledge gained during the diplomatic challenge. "The Therians value their neutrality," General Vax objected. "They would not intervene." "They would if offered access to the crystal deposits in Zariath's outer asteroid belt, a resource they need, and we have historically restricted," Elira countered. "This concession costs us little strategically, but holds high value for them." Through their connection, Lucas felt her drawing on multiple knowledge bases simultaneously: diplomatic insights, historical precedents, resource management calculations, to construct a solution that balanced immediate compassion with long-term wisdom. Furthermore, she added, manipulating the display again. I would deploy our new long-range communication technology to the colony, allowing the remaining 40% of citizens to maintain cultural connection during occupation. This preserves Zariathian identity even under Krell control, until diplomatic solutions can be negotiated. The holographic simulation couldn't fully represent this multifaceted approach, but the strategic projections adjusted to show the partial evacuation and strengthened communication networks. This solution represents the true essence of compassion. Aelira concluded, not merely emotional response to suffering, but comprehensive action that balances immediate needs against long-term welfare. It acknowledges the reality of our military position while refusing to accept that sacrifice of any Zariathian lives is inevitable. The council chamber fell silent as her proposal was considered. Through their psychic link, Lucas felt Aelira's absolute conviction in her approach, not prideful certainty, but the balanced confidence of a leader who had considered all factors and found the best possible path forward. After a long moment, High Priest Hiral spoke. The test of compassion is complete. The council will now deliberate on the princess's performance across all 7 challenges. As the council members withdrew for their deliberation, Lucas approached Aelira, their psychic link vibrating with shared tension. That wasn't the response they expected. He said quietly, "Perhaps not." She agreed, but it was the only response I could give with integrity. Through their connection, he sensed no regret, only calm certainty. You refused to accept their framing of the problem. He observed with admiration. You created a third path. The binary choices we're presented with are often constructs of limited thinking. Aelira replied, a ruler's duty is to see beyond apparent limitations. Before Lucas could respond, the council members returned, their brief deliberation suggesting either quick consensus or deeply entrenched division. Seneschal Odrin, as the senior council member, delivered their verdict. Princess Aelira Zariath. He began formally. You have completed the trial of 7 challenges in a manner unprecedented in our recorded history. Your performance in the first 6 challenges demonstrated exceptional royal qualities: physical endurance, strategic thinking, spiritual connection, diplomatic skill, technological mastery, and historical knowledge. He paused, his ancient face unreadable. Regarding the final test of compassion, the council's judgment is divided. Some members, his eyes flicked briefly toward General Vax, believe you failed to adhere to the parameters of the test by rejecting both presented options. Others, now a glance toward Counselor Miria, believe your solution demonstrated the highest form of compassion by refusing to accept unnecessary sacrifice. The chamber remained absolutely silent as Odrin continued. In such cases of division, our tradition defers to the High Priest's spiritual discernment. He turned toward Hiral. What say you, High Priest? Has Princess Aelira demonstrated true compassion worthy of Zariathian royalty? Hiral stepped forward, his ancient eyes meeting Aelira's directly. The test of compassion is not merely about feeling for others' suffering, but about finding wisdom within compassion. The princess rejected artificial limitations to forge a path that honors all Zariathian lives while acknowledging practical realities. He paused, his voice strengthening. This is not failure to follow parameters. This is transcendence of false dichotomies. This is the essence of true leadership. Through their psychic link, Lucas felt Aelira's surge of emotion at these words, relief, validation, and a renewed sense of purpose. Moreover, Hiral continued, throughout all 7 challenges, the princess has demonstrated not just the individual virtues being tested, but their integration into a coherent royal character. Physical courage balanced by strategic patience, spiritual connection informing diplomatic insight, technological skill guided by historical understanding, and, ultimately, compassion tempered by wisdom. The ancient priest turned to address the full council. It is my judgment that Princess Aelira has successfully completed the trial of 7 challenges. She has proven herself worthy not merely to continue living, but to rule Zariath with honor and vision. A ripple of reaction passed through the council members, some nodding in agreement, others accepting with more reservation. Even General Vax, while clearly not pleased, inclined his head in reluctant acknowledgment of the high priest's authority. Seneschal Odron struck the ceremonial gong. The judgment is rendered. The trial of 7 challenges is complete. Princess Alira Zariath has fulfilled the requirements of honor restoration through trial rather than sacrifice. The cosmic balance is preserved. The formal pronouncement sent a wave of energy through the chamber, a tangible shift in the atmosphere that even Lucas could perceive without Zariathian senses. Through their psychic link, he felt Alira's complex emotions, triumph tinged with humility, relief overshadowed by awareness of the responsibilities that now lay before her. There remains one final ritual. Hiral announced. The bond between challenger and witness must be formally dissolved, with gratitude for the sacred connection that enabled true witnessing. Lucas felt a sudden reluctance at the prospect of losing their psychic link, a connection that had grown meaningful beyond its ceremonial purpose. Through their bond, he sensed Alira felt the same, though both recognized the necessity of returning to their separate consciousnesses. High Priest Hiral led them to the center of the chamber, where they once again stood facing each other. The ritual was simpler than the bonding ceremony, requiring them only to join hands one final time as Hiral spoke ancient words of gratitude and release. As their palms met, Lucas felt the connection between them surge with unexpected intensity, as if their minds were sharing a lifetime of thoughts in the few moments before separation. Through the link came Alira's unspoken message. This ending is also a beginning. Then, with a sensation like a door gently closing, the psychic bond dissolved. Lucas felt the boundaries of his consciousness return to normal, his mind once again solely his own. The absence of Alira's presence created an emptiness he hadn't anticipated. "It is done," Hiral announced. Witness and challenger returned to themselves, carrying the memory of shared journey. Looking into Alira's eyes, Lucas saw the same mixture of loss and hope he felt himself. Without the psychic link, they would need to learn to communicate as separate individuals again. But perhaps that journey would have its own rewards. Seneschal Odron stepped forward. "By the authority of the Council of 13, I hereby confirm Princess Alira's right to rule as sovereign of Zariath. The period of honor restoration is complete." Councillor Miria was the first to kneel in renewed allegiance, followed quickly by other council members. Even General Vax, after a moment's hesitation, bent his knee, tradition and hierarchy ultimately outweighing his personal reservations. As the formal proceedings concluded, preparations began immediately for Alira's official confirmation ceremony. Lucas found himself momentarily forgotten in the flurry of activity, a strange sensation after days of being ceremonially central to the princess's trial. He made his way to a quiet alcove off the main chamber, intending to compose his official report to Earth's diplomatic corps. The events of the past week would require careful explanation, particularly his deep involvement in what might be perceived as interference in Zariathian cultural practices. "Captain Harper." He turned to find Alira. No. Queen Alira now, effectively, standing in the entrance to the alcove. Without their psychic link, he could only guess at her thoughts from her expression, which remained composed yet somehow more open than when they had first met. "Your Highness," he bowed formally, "congratulations on your confirmation." "Thank you," she said, stepping closer. "Both for the congratulations and for everything else. Without your intervention, I would now be part of the eternal honor fire rather than planning Zariath's future." "You gave yourself that chance," Lucas countered. "I merely suggested alternatives." "Sometimes," she said with a small smile, "suggesting alternatives is the greatest gift one can offer." She paused, seeming to consider her next words carefully. "The confirmation ceremony will take place tomorrow. Afterward, I will address the Council regarding Zariath's path forward, including our relationship with Earth." "I look forward to hearing your vision," Lucas replied diplomatically, though he found himself genuinely curious about her plans. "I would like you to remain on Zariath," she said directly, "not merely as Earth's envoy, but as a special advisor to the throne. Your perspective has proven valuable beyond diplomatic protocol." The offer surprised him, though perhaps it shouldn't have given the connection they had shared. "I would be honored," he said sincerely, "though Earth might have some procedural objections." "I suspect they will find the arrangement advantageous," Alara replied with subtle humor, "particularly when they learn of Zariath's willingness to share certain crystal technologies previously considered sacred." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "A diplomatic incentive?" "A natural evolution of alliance," she corrected gently. "Zariath has maintained isolation for millennia, guarding traditions that preserved us but also limited us. It is time to engage more fully with the cosmic community, beginning with Earth." Through the large windows of the alcove, the 3 moons of Zariath were visible in the evening sky, no longer in perfect alignment, but forming a new constellation against the darkening firmament. "New traditions," Lucas murmured, following her gaze to the moons. "Built upon the wisdom of the old," Alira added, "honor preserved through evolution rather than sacrifice." As they stood together contemplating the future, both personal and civilizational, Lucas reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this moment. A week ago, he had arrived on an alien world to study its culture as an objective observer. Now he stood beside its ruler as something far more complex: advisor, ally, and perhaps something else still undefined but full of potential. "The eternal honor fire still burns," Aelara said softly, "but now it will be fed with achievements rather than lives, with innovations that honor our past while creating our future." She turned to him, her luminescent eyes reflecting the moonlight. "And you, Lucas Harper, have helped light the first new flame." Beyond the palace walls, the capital city of Zariath glittered with crystalline lights against the gathering darkness, 12,000 years of tradition now poised at the threshold of transformation. And in a quiet alcove, 2 individuals from distant worlds contemplated the unexpected path that had brought them together, a path that had saved a life, challenged a tradition, and perhaps begun writing a new chapter in the cosmic history of 2 civilizations. The alien princess had been prepared to sacrifice herself for honor, but the human wouldn't let her. And in preventing that sacrifice, he had helped her discover a greater honor: the courage to transform tradition rather than merely preserve it. Together, they stood at the beginning of a journey neither could have imagined when they first met, a journey of evolution, connection, and possibilities as vast as the star-filled sky above Zariath's crystal spires.